You're listening to the Anxious Scholar Podcast, a podcast for anxious scholars. If you're a high school student who can't wait to go to university, but also is kind of overwhelmed with lots of unanswered questions like me, then you've definitely come to the right place. On this podcast, I sit down with EGM alumni while they share valuable advice from this exciting journey of theirs that we have yet to take. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode and learn lots of useful information about the college application process, unis, and higher education in general. Hi, Juliette. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you. I'm a little bit sick. Apologize for that, but
It's
great.
okay, no problem. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really thankful to you for agreeing to do this interview because, Cambridge is a dream school for so many people, and it's obviously selective. So we all want to find out, the tips and tricks on, how to get your chances, how to higher your chances of getting in, and how the process works. So thank you for agreeing to, share your advice, the challenges you might have faced during your process. I think it's a very valuable story and experience you're going to tell us today. So could you start by saying a few words about yourself, about your background?
All right, so I came to IGM in grande section. My mother is Chinese and my father is French, so I've always had that little, bilingual twist that IGM loves, apparently. And yeah, I've been in the school in a while, and I know IGM quite well now, and yeah, that's about it.
So what are you studying right now at Cambridge?
I'm studying land economy, which is basically a mix between law, economics, and environmental studies. Although I initially applied for geography, so I switched in the process.
We'll talk more about it.
Okay, yeah.
And about the applications to Cambridge, I was wondering if there's like there's different ways of applying. So, do you apply for a major, or I know some people choose their college. Like there's 29 colleges you can apply for undergraduate studies. Some people really know that they want to go to this college specifically, and some people are just, I want to go to Cambridge for this major, and that's why they apply.
Yeah, big mistake. Not looking and searching at just colleges in general and not looking them up. I strongly regret my college choice. I go to Newnham College. It's a very pretty college. I'd say aesthetically it's amazing. The accommodation is amazing. The facilities we have are just incredible compared to other colleges. However, it is an all-girls college. I thought, as an international student, that colleges did not matter because I thought it was just a place where you would sleep and you would find friends, uni-wide. It wouldn't be a problem. And I just thought, well, my advisors told me apply to Newnham because the entrance, for the IB was a point lower than other colleges. In the end, that did not matter. That did not matter because I asked a bunch of other friends from Cambridge, from France. They all got the same offer condition, which was 17 on the back. Some other colleges actually got higher than that, and they're not even central colleges. And it was for modern languages as well, which is very weird. They asked for 18 on the back. Anyway, so yeah, the college really, in terms of is it easier to get in if you go to this certain college? That myth busted, does not exist. However, I will say that if you apply for maybe the top 2 colleges, which are in Cambridge, Trinity, and St. John's, those I think are a bit of a different story. But all the rest, I think, are on the same level in terms of difficulty to get in. I think it really doesn't matter because they do try to standardize their kind of entry requirements, and it's kind of uni-wide anyways. So big mistake not looking up your college and thinking that college life would not matter because it really matters. It is basically the central socializing, process that will be like basically will determine your uni experience in general. So do look up your college and do make your research. That's important.
And now that you're there and you've maybe met people from other colleges, like how different are they? You say it's like it really like affects like your whole student, your experience as a student. Is it the professors, the community, or the clubs?
Okay, it's Cambridge and Oxford have so in terms of societies, there's two levels. There's uni-wide societies and there's college level societies. So definitely for the clubs and societies kind of part, your college does matter, but you still have the uni kind of experience thing. For example, like I do MMA and powerlifting, and those two things are uni-wide. They're not colleges at all. But if you're doing something like soccer or something more common, then you will definitely have, a college that's, better than others in those like societies. So look that up as well. In terms of atmosphere, definitely changes between colleges. If you're in a college that is far from the center, they tend to be quite, not closeted, but as in they stay between themselves because you just like going to the center is too far for them. So they tend to have that very like closed kind of community. If you're in a central college, it's a lot more open, and generally they're a bit older as colleges as well, so they're a bit more traditional, I would say. There's definitely colleges where they're more conservative than others. I'm in a very, let's say, on the political scale, very leftist college. So it's quite nice because it's very inclusive. And like, again, like since it's all girls as well, like they give out a lot of women's hygiene, like objects and needs. And like, yeah, it's really, really nice for that reason. So yeah, colleges definitely vary in atmosphere, in social life, but there's definitely that element of luck as well. It depends really on your year. For example, I know for a fact that my year, I did not get lucky with them because I know from other years that their year was a lot nicer, for example. So there's definitely an element of luck as well, but in general, colleges do have their distinct character, and you need to, like look that up and follow that and find out which one is better for you, basically.
Mm-hmm. And you have to apply to, you have to choose the college you want to go to. You can't just like apply to anywhere at Cambridge.
Okay, so there's two different ways of doing this. There's an open application. Mm-hmm. Generally, I would not recommend doing that, although it seems like appealing. It's not like you get randomly allocated to a random college. That's not how it works. They will look at, in your course, which college has been least demanded, and they will put you there. So don't go for an open application because oftentimes you'll end up in like one of those like very far away colleges, and it's just like I wouldn't recommend. And there's a different way of doing it, which is like you apply which is generally like what people choose is like you apply to a specific college, which is what I did as well. In that case, yeah, do look up your college. However, there's also another third thing, which is very Oxbridge, which is the pooling system, where basically if a college rejects you, mm-hmm. but they still think that you're a good enough applicant, they will put you in the pool and let a college who does not have as many applicants pool you, and then you get pooled to that college. Again, generally, if you get lucky enough, you can get to a good college, but generally it will be colleges that, again, are a bit like far from the center and do not have great facilities and etc. So yeah, colleges, mm-hmm. that's, yeah, an element that I did not take into consideration that I think everyone should take into consideration. But anyways, my big mistake.
Learn from your mistake.
Learn from your mistake, kids.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Thank you. So not choosing a college does not mean like it heightens your chances of like getting in.
More again, that idea that if you aim for the top two, then definitely it will be harder.
Okay.
It will objectively be hard, especially in STEM as well. If you apply for Trinity Maths, they have a reputation, the Trinity Mathmos, like that's how we call them. They have a reputation for just being not geniuses, but mega geniuses. So yeah, no, definitely like those two, I would say if you want to be sure to get in and you're not a genius, then perhaps avoid. but they're historical colleges. Like they're amazing. Like but it really depends on what your goals are. However, for other colleges, I think it's a bit on a spectrum, but it's relatively standardized across colleges. There's still a bit of a spectrum that exists between like more, for example, like depending on the course you're in, if you're an engineer, for example, and you're applying to, I don't know, Churchill, who has like 25 engineers a year, then it will boost your chances because they just get more engineers a year. So it really depends on your course, and the college's like availabilities for that course. There's like a lot of different parameters, but yeah, generally I'd say it's more standardized if you're not aiming for the top. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you were applying in general, like before, choosing the colleges specifically to Cambridge, even not talking about other countries like Oxbridge, how do you choose like which one? Because you can't apply to both, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Is this like a hard choice for you to make, and how did you do that?
So for me, it was very easy because land economy as a subject, because I initially wanted to apply to land economy, but changed my mind in the application process. Land economy only exists in Cambridge. I would say in Oxford and Cambridge, there are very different courses. In STEM, for example, in Oxford, you get, physics at like very separate, physics, chemistry are separate, for example. In Cambridge, they all fall in under one big course called natural sciences. And in that sense, and it's a lot more broad, you touch on a lot more subjects, it's, a lot more general knowledge about a lot of things if you don't know where to specify in for natural sciences. If you're very specific about what subject you want to do, for example, like biomed, then go to Oxford, probably. In the humanities, it's quite similar. In Oxford, you have PPE, you don't have that in Cambridge. In Cambridge, you have HSPS. It's a lot less about philosophy, a lot more, you don't have economics in HSPS, so definitely courses are different. That's one factor. One other factor that obviously differentiates both, I think, is the atmosphere. Keep in mind that one reason why I was not too sure about Oxford, I think, was because I initially thought, which is not very founded, that Oxford was more conservative, more stuck up a little bit, and Cambridge was a lot more open-minded. That holds only to a very limited extent, I think. But it's still, there are still signs, but honestly, I have a lot of friends in Oxford. I've been visiting them quite a bit, and honestly, I just feel like both universities are parallel in the sense that we have the same life, like the same institutions exist, the same societies exist. We have so many connections between Oxford and Cambridge. There's for example, there's varsity, so it's a yearly thing where both universities compete in sports. There's a lot of exchanges between colleges. The colleges are the same, like the same names. So there's so many similarities that at this point, like in common knowledge, what you thought, your expectations about Oxford and Cambridge and how they're different does not really hold in real life. So I would say the course is the only component that would differentiate both. And yeah, the course and like the different like particularities of each course, basically.
That's something I was wondering for a long time, because I was like, okay, they're two different universities. Why can't we apply to both? And then right. Now that you like talk about it like in this way, I'm like, well, actually, it's like a big university where you look at both choices of majors, and you see like from a bigger pool of like choices which one is like more. And it's great that they're interconnected, and you're not completely like separating yourself like, oh, I wish I could have applied to both, but you still are invested in their lives.
I think one reason you can't apply to both, I think, is general like government policy, because it's to avoid elitism, I think. I'm not sure, I didn't do my research on this. To avoid
what?
Elitism.
Elitism.
Okay. Sorry, I'm
No,
very mispronounced. Elitism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because obviously, if all the top applicants were applying to both, then you would end up with, I mean, both would end up giving offers to, you know, like people, and maybe someone would like, yeah, someone would rather go to one over the other, and then like the other would take over for a year, and then the other would take over for a year. I mean, it'd be a whole mess. So there's that. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, I did not know about this being an international student, but domestically, Oxford is more humanities focused, Cambridge is more STEM focused. So keep that in mind if you're in your choice of application. Yeah. And
you said you specifically wanted to go to Cambridge because you knew you wanted to do land economy.
Yeah.
So did you already have in mind where you wanted to work after university? What interested you? I mean, maybe you can talk more about like the course you're doing right now. So what is land economy? What are you studying?
Right. So land economy is a very funny Cambridge fabrication. Initially, in the 1850s, it was in the agriculture department. So it was all about how people farm. And then it became real estate management. So it was for rich people who had estates and who wanted to manage their estates. And then now, with a more obviously modernized twist to it, it's broadened out and it's become a mix of so many different faculties. Like I have law professors that are teaching my law course at the moment. So it's basically economics, law, very different in first year. So literally it's almost like you're studying two different courses. And then in second and third year, you get to kind of merge those two. Like you have modules in law and economics. And then there's also things in investments, in like financial mathematics. So there's a bit of statistics and mathematics in first year, and the rest that you can further, take into depth, like deepen in the next few years. But essentially, it's just a mix of so many things. So hard to define. But yeah, it does have an environmental focus, which was really, for me, which was like the main reason why I applied, because I think it's one of the key challenges today, and it's definitely what I want to work in the future, and looking at the interconnections between the private sector and what companies can do for the environment, I think and for climate change, I think is the way to go, for me personally, for my career. Yeah.
And so initially you applied for geography, not land economy. Why did you? What did you have in mind? Like again, like what work you wanted to do after, or what you wanted to study in geography?
So I initially wanted to apply for land economy. Then what I did was I started doing my reading for my personal statements, realized how impossible it was to fit land economy in my personal statement. And keep in mind that for UCAS, you have to apply for 5 universities, and you have to write the same essay for the 5 universities. So writing a personal statement for land economy could not it just had nothing to do with other courses that I wanted to apply to. So I had to choose something that, kind of fit the broader picture of my personal statement, which ended up being about economics and geography and the interconnections between those two. So I applied to LSE, I applied to St. Andrews, I applied to UCL. So I applied to 2 courses in LSE, sorry. And so I just I was so stressed of having to risk my entire personal statement for one course, that I was like, well, I just can't take that risk. Hence my anxiety at the time. And so I was like, well, I'll just have to do geography, I guess, and just give it a shot from there. So that's what ended up happening, and which is why I switched to geography.
And in the other universities, you applied to geography or geopolitics?
Yeah, it was economics and geography.
Those are the courses I
applied to. It was the course was called economics and geography, so it was 2 courses in one. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, I would have been very happy studying that. But land economy is kind of that anyways. So I'm very happy where I am.
And you mentioned you want, for example, like the terminology might not be, not everybody might be familiar with that. Like you said, you wanted to choose courses according to your major, or is that not the same thing?
I did not say. I don't
You
think
did
I
not say
major.
that. No, you did not, because that's not something you use in the UK. Like you don't.
Yeah,
say
you don't say major in the UK.
So
You say course.
your course is a land economy, and you choose classes that are according to this course.
Classes.
So or they already impose classes.
No, they're imposed. So land economy has their own lecture and their own exam, and it's not modules that you pick and choose. In first year at least. In second and third year, you pick your modules, but again, within the land economy department, you don't go and merge different departments.
Okay.
That doesn't exist in Cambridge. You can't just go about and merge different departments. It exists in Oxford because you get PPE, but yeah, in Cambridge that you can't do that. So you have to choose one and you stick to it. And the switching process was not easy. So yeah. So you don't just go and listen to me and think, oh, I'll apply to this and then I'll see. No, that does not work. You have to work for it, and it's quite hard. So
does this mean going through another application process, convincing
almost,
them?
Almost going through another application process. I was lucky enough because land economy and geography are quite close. For example, if I were to apply natural sciences, I just wouldn't be able to make the switch. I've had friends who tried to switch from land economy to law. They could not do that. Or land economy to economics. They could not do that unless very exceptional circumstances. So it is. It's not easy, and I was lucky enough to do that. And I had to do another interview for it. So yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
And was there any additional exams you had to take, or additional assignments? I mean, for geography, since that's what you applied for.
I was lucky again because usually they have a written exam called the GAA. I think they didn't have it for my year, so I did not have to take that. And no, you had to. It was 2 interviews. And then 2 written essays that I had submitted for high school already and that were corrected by high school teachers. I had to submit those. And it was quite tough having to pick essays for that. And because we don't really do geography in UGM, so I had to choose things that were mildly related to history and geography. And then, although they say to give out, something that's already corrected, what tends to happen is you give out one that's already been corrected, and then you write one specifically for your course because, I just had nothing related to geography. So I ended up writing an extra one, and then getting it corrected by a geography teacher in high school. But I did not write it, for terminale or for première.
Could you explain what those essays are? Because I've never heard of that. It's additionally to your personal statement, and it's only...
It's just essays that you've written in a high school subject. So it was a history...
existing essays?
Yeah, existing essays. So I had one history essay about imperialism, and then I had another essay about, I think it was les espaces maritimes, something like that. Obviously, yeah, if you wrote it in French, you'd have to translate it. So, yeah.
Is that every year, or was that only a requirement for your...
That depends on your college, actually. So some colleges don't really ask for it. My college did. And it's also one reason why people were choose this college, because you, if you write in essays, they have more things to judge you on.
Yeah.
And if you're a successful essay writer, then it's to your advantage to choose one college to ask for essays.
Okay, and did you know that in advance, or was it not a problem because you already had those essays written?
I mean, yeah, one of the essays I had to write for it.
Yeah.
But one of the essays, I had already written it, so it was fine. I'd say writing the perfect essay was quite challenging. So yeah, I did go back at it a lot. But yeah, it ended up working. So pretty happy about it.
And what about your personal statement? Again, like you mentioned, the fact that it has to be broad enough for the 5 universities, but it's also really important. You really want to like convey your personality, and it has to be concise. So it's like there's a 4,000 character limit. So yeah.
So it's.
What do you think is important to include in that?
It's very short. So yeah, you constantly have to cut things out and stuff. But I think one of the main things they want to see is not you bragging about whatever extracurriculars you did, like in the US. It's they want to see why you, as an individual, think that your course is relevant in the broader picture of things. So there's a lot of contextualizing going on. There's a lot of, well, I did this, which proves why I'm interested in this course. And there's a lot of making links to between different abstract concepts within your course. So they want to see, you want to demonstrate your ability to connect the dots and to show that you've actually read the course content, and that the course content, the entirety of the course content really corresponds to you. And yeah, I think it's that, and obviously thinking critically is very important. And yeah, it's a lot more academically focused rather than it being just kind of personal, which is why I think the name is quite misleading. Mm-hmm. But yeah, essentially.
So you explain like why you chose this course, or you explain like how is it important in the world, like how is this topic, like I think how is it important?
Yeah, it's like I think it's much about like kind of showing, how do I explain it? Hold on, let me think about this. So one thing is definitely showing why you personally attach a lot of significance to your course, and why you are, the perfect candidate, and you need to demonstrate that. I mean, you know the course content, that you can connect, very different elements of your course. For example, in geography, for example, we have physical and human geography. So it's you go from studying volcanoes to studying, the flow of migrants in Africa. And although those are connected, in some way or another, you need to explicit that connection and show why that connection is important to you and why it's important, in a broader scale of things. So definitely being able to think critically, to connect the dots, have an idea of the bigger picture, at least in the humanities, of course. And yeah, and obviously demonstrate your passion. Being passionate about things is very important, and you need to show that in your writing. And yeah, it goes through a lot of work, but you'll get there.
And you said, not specifically like list like all the extracurricular activities that you did. Is there like a section for that in the application, the UCAS, or?
I don't think there's a section for the activities you did, but in your personal statement, it's nice to mention things that you did that are related. Obviously, okay. They don't care that you won like a bronze medal in your karate competition, unless you link it to something that that is related to your course. For example, if you're studying like, I don't know, management, for example, and you were a team captain for something, you can link those two. You can say, oh well I have an ability to to see how people work together, and I'm interested in that, and that's reflected in my team captain experience. So as long as you can link those things, it's fine, and it adds a lot to your application. For example, me, I think, doing the high school debate team in IGM, really, like, it was a nice thing to put in your personal statement, definitely, and it helped a lot for the interviews, a lot.
Public speaking,
and just like your ability to think spontaneously on the dot and think logically and communicate logically. That's one thing that they really want to see in your interview.
I'm in the debate club, and I've been doing that. Like, that's my 3rd year, and we just went to like Madrid for the HMC a conference. And like, for example, do they care if, like, I mean, it's obviously great, but like, if you won any awards or like, conferences, like.
Yeah, I did. So we couldn't go to HMC. I mean, we did it online. Which, I mean, for me, it was like so discouraging because you don't get to dress up. I mean, you do, but it's not the same. You don't get the adrenaline. Without the adrenaline, I performed a lot a lot worse than I would. But I did alignment, which was a Saint-Germain, like London conference thing. And yeah, I won an award to that, but it was the only like in-person conference that we had. So that was quite nice. But then COVID. Yeah. So.
I know we went, and when people told me about like how this was their 2nd time and they already did on Zoom, and I'm like, and when I lived through that, like, being with like there's Harvard students, like the staff, and then all the students from all around the world, and you're like in Madrid, and it's just the experience is like, so, I mean,
that's insane.
It's a shame that COVID, but. So for example, did you like mention that you got the award?
I think I don't know if I mentioned that I had an award, but I did mention that it was like. I think I was like debate. How do you call it?
Chair.
Not chair. The top ones.
Head chair. You were head chair.
I was head chair.
Oh wow.
I was head chair for time in that. So I did mention that. But again, they want to see your ability to link things. They don't really care that you won an award, whatever. They want to see that actually helped your understanding of world politics, things like that. So if you're gonna mention those things, keep it academic.
So yeah, the personal statement is one way of showing your passion, like you said, but the interviews are 2. So I was wondering, is there like a way to prepare for the interviews?
Again, really depends on your course. In the humanities, so what I did for 2 weeks is just read the news, go in depth, form your opinions about what is happening around you, and that will take you a long way. Go through, again, that's the basics, but go through your personal statement. Anything that you mentioned, any concepts, any author that you quoted, you need to go more in depth and make sure that you know that by heart, so that if they ask you can, that's your ground, and you know everything about it. Also, one thing that's nice is mentioning books in your interview. So you don't need to read the whole book, because honestly, even in university, when you have reading lists for essays, right? And it's written, you need to read this. No one has the time to read books these days. So if you go to, I don't know, Wikipedia, if it's a famous book, you can just like search up summaries of it and search up like basically like broad conceptual ideas behind the book. That's enough. But if you mention it, it makes you seem smart, and like it's a good thing to have. So definitely read those summaries online, and it will take you a long way. Also, again, that's something that you acquire in the longer run, but if you're like, you have to be comfortable speaking in front of people who intimidate you. If like that carries you a long way, I think. So I know you can't really train for that within the space of a couple weeks, but make sure that like grab a friend, grab your parents, and basically talk about your subject for 15 minutes. And if you can do that, then you're already preparing quite well, I think, in my opinion.
Well, 15 minutes to make an impression, that's so short.
It is short. I mean, like, if you can ramble on for 15 minutes about your subject, I think it's already, I mean, you can obviously go, I could definitely go beyond at that time, but I'm saying 15 minutes as like a kind of random, like, time mark, but I think,
so like, it might be longer.
It might be, of course it might be longer. No, like, the interview was like 45 minutes. Something like
that.
Okay. No, but as in, like, if you just, like, sit someone in front of you and, like, just, like, without having prepared anything, and you can just, like, ramble on about your subject for 15 minutes, then that's already, like, a good sign that, like, you're doing good.
Okay. And do you remember what questions they asked you?
Oh, right. 2 interviews. First interview was a lot more personal, a lot more about my personal statement, a lot more about things I had already studied, and about, like kind of like, so what interests you about the course, etc. Second interview was very skill-based. So you had, first of all, they gave you an article 30 minutes before the interview. You get to read through it and make analysis, and then make some kind of analysis, and then they would ask you about it in the interview. There's also this thing that was quite tough, for geography at least, where they showed you maps independent from each other. So they would show you one map, and then you describe it, and then they would show you the next map, and then you describe it, etc., etc. And in the end, they would be like, well, what's in common with all these maps? Mm-hmm. And one was about, thinking back, like it's quite, it's quite intuitive. It was one about infant mortality and one about, I think, like rates of religious practices, something like that. And then the last one was about, like, education or something like that. And then, and, like, you had to connect everything in the end. And on the moment, I was like, what am I supposed to say? And then, obviously, like, as you go, you have ideas that pop up, and they kind of want to see exactly that. They want to see your inner reasoning and how you go about in approaching that question. It's more about that rather than giving a straightforward answer right away. So, which is why I was saying earlier, like, your ability to think logically and communicate that is very important.
And okay, that's it's good to know that like which interviews are more like based on your, like you said, skills and knowledge, and which ones are more like about you, like talking about yourself. And it's so, I can imagine it's like really stressful. It's like it's a big part of your application. So obviously they consider other things like grades, personal statement, but that too. And many people are even like, they go through the process until that moment. So do you think like the way you convey yourself is really important? Or if you say the right things and you kind of show that, you're thinking critically, you're passionate, and you understand what's happening, or like if you show that you're stressed, is that bad? Or is it they understand it? It's like,
definitely they understand that you're stressed. And for me, my interviewees were very nice about it. They were like, well, like, yeah, like, I remember, like, I think an hour before the interview, there was like a bunch of not alumni, but like current students that were, like, give us a little like prep talk before the interview, like, you guys will be fine, like, don't have a panic attack, it'll be fine. That was quite nice. It was on Zoom as well, so it might change because usually you actually go to the university to have your interview, which I think might be more intimidating for a lot of people. But yeah, it might be more stressful, but you're also like more immersed in the atmosphere, so I feel like that would be nice. Didn't go through that experience, but yeah, the Zoom was okay. Again, I think like I'm definitely someone who performs better in real life, I think, rather than on Zoom, but it worked fine. What else was there?
Sometimes, I think that's what we were talking about. Okay. For example, in America, I've talked to like première students who are, terminale students who are like applying to universities in America, and they've already like done like their interviews on Zoom, or not on Zoom. Like sometimes there's people from the university in Paris, and you go to a place to like do the interview. If that makes sense.
Yeah, we didn't have that first Zoom.
Okay, so the questions of the interview, I wanted to talk about, like, you definitely mentioned that culture générale, and that you explained that it comes from like reading the news, being aware of what's happening in the world, and you said, for example, quoting like authors in your personal statement. Is there any other ways that you can like portray this, like convey like your culture générale, and how important that is for Cambridge?
Other ways,
well, not necessarily. That's enough. Just in your conversation, it like shines through. Like a book you read and this news. This thing that what's happening in the world. Like, can you go without this and be accepted into Cambridge?
Well, in humanities, no.
Yeah.
Again, I'm speaking for the humanities here because I think for STEM, it's quite a different skill set that they're asking for. But in the humanities, it's just like, it's kind of, your ability to think abstractly and to contextualize things. and think critically about what's happening around you is just it's so important, and you need to bring that out when you're asked. And even when you're not, you know, you could just like, they could ask you a basic question and you could be like, oh well, actually I can link that to this other thing that I was thinking about the other day, and how this and this like, and how this and this happens, you know. So no, it's in that sense, yeah, like having a broad culture and being able to, you know, bounce on very different areas of things, and like kind of play with that, and kind of integrate it in like your own opinions is very important, and not just recite whatever teacher tells you. You know, you need to be able to form your own opinions. Definitely, they want to see that.
And I totally understand that in like geopolitics, which is something very related to your major, to your course. What about like things like art and music? Do you have to be, you know?
Oh, I mean, again, depends on your course. I mean, if you're doing art history, like obviously.
Yeah, but for you, for example, for you, your course.
Not really. No, I think it's something more like, again, it needs to be academic.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
But it's, I mean, yeah, no, like that's no. You do have to stay specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, like your interviews, like it was specific to your course and to your, you know, personal
Definitely.
statement, to your
Yeah.
profile. And you mentioned that you know, there's like the required grades like on the back, you have to get like the minimum, like 17 as a conditional offer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that always the case? I mean, you said sometimes it's 18, 17. What was the case for you?
Okay, well, for me it was 17. I have a friend who goes to Selwyn College who does modern languages. They asked for 18 on the back, which is quite odd, which is huge. But I think it might be because of COVID, and how they knew that, you know, maybe grades got boosted, and so they kind of adjusted to that. But no, globally, asking around, it was 17 for the French back, which I think is quite unfair. Because for the A levels, they ask for A star, A, or like A star, AA, which if you convert it to the back is like about 15, 16, something like that. So, yeah, no, the requirements are quite high for international students.
And that 17 is like the moyenne of all your back exams, like
okay. It was the moyenne. Is the moyenne generale. Obviously, they will ask for specific courses. They will ask that you get a certain level for me, they asked 17 on maths, for example. So yeah, it depends on your course.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't meet those criteria, then obviously the application is not even going to be considered.
No, that's okay. No, that's the condition. So that's like once you get your offer.
Oh, okay.
You have a condition. For like, no, that's a different story. Whether or not like your average is considered, your bulletin is considered. Mm-hmm. However, my EGM bulletin average was not 17. It was definitely not 17. It's probably around like 16 and a half, I think. And yeah, I mean,
they already knew that, and they just said, we accept you unless you, like, if you get
yeah. I mean, it goes in your application. I mean, in your Oxbridge application. I think other universities in the UK, they don't look at your bulletin, but they do look. Basically, your advisors will fill in your UCAS for you, and they will put your predicted grades. Mm-hmm. They look at your predicted grades. Yeah. They definitely look at that. So yeah, and generally, the predicted grades are quite, you know, accurate. They turn out to be quite true, for most people. So yeah. Okay.
And I want to talk more about, you know, your experience in high school. So before this whole application process, like for example, what spécialité did you take in high school?
I took maths and SOS.
And you dropped HGCSE?
I dropped. No, I actually.
You didn't take. Oh,
I didn't take HGCSE, which is really funny because I did geography.
Yeah.
I took NSE.
Okay.
I dropped NSE. Honestly, yeah, I think NSE is quite. I think it can, like, superficially it's nice, but in practice, like how the way it's taught, because it's such a new spécialité. The way it's taught in EGM is questionable. But, like, the teachers were great. They were great. They were very nice about it, and they obviously we knew that they were new to it as well, so we kind of went through the process of learning with them. But no, it was a cute subject. But then maths and SOS, maths for the bac was I don't you probably will look at the archive and you'll see how much of a joke it was.
It's easy.
It was so easy. We had
awesome.
we had 4 questions. You could choose 3 at random. You could choose your exercises. There's 1 QCM. It was a joke, honestly. So maths was quite easy. For the bac. SOS, I'm not gonna lie, I think I did not revise for maths. And I revised for 2 weeks for SOS.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up getting 17. On maths I got 20. So I think SOS is very much, I mean, like other humanities on the bac, it's very much très aléatoire.
Subjective.
So very subjective, based on who's correcting you and based on simple things like even your accroche. So no, I think SOS in that sense was a bit more challenging. But yeah.
But, I mean, in the end, it was not a problem.
It worked out.
And yeah, I mean, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about the program, like you said, math was harder than the bac. But in the sense that during the première and the terminale, what did you learn? I mean, maybe math is more technical, which means that students are not necessarily going to understand what you're talking about. But for example, SOS, what are the topics that you covered? Okay,
very funny. SOS, I think, is a very funny creation of the French education system. Basically, it's a mix between economics and sociology and policy making a little bit. And in what they wanted to do, which kind of did not really work out in the end, is what they wanted to do in première is you focus on microeconomics. In terminale, you do macroeconomics. There's no modeling, so no maths. It's very much, I mean, yeah, it's basically humanities. It's more humanities than social science, I would say, SOS. And you do go through so many different subjects, so many different, just theories, if you go in depth in them. For the bac, I actually, because I was really interested in those subjects, I had to deepen a lot of things for myself, and that turned out to be really useful in university. But no, SOS is, I mean, I think it's a nice subject, but I think the way it's taught in practice is a bit questionable.
Maybe it's too complex for high school.
It's not too complex, but as in they try to cram too many things in one subject, and it ends up being very confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah. That's good, take into account when you're choosing. We already chose our specialty, but maybe for the next year, for the second. I have a question about the IGCSE in English.
Right.
Did you mention that on your application, and is that important?
No, I mean, I did not even do it.
Oh,
so
because of COVID.
Because of COVID. I mean, for COVID, basically what they did is that you had a choice to do it or to not do it.
Yeah.
I chose to not do it. And I thought, initially I was a bit stressed about it. I was like, oh, well, will it matter? It did not matter. So, it's not, I mean, I don't think UK universities really look at that. I mean, it might be different now because maybe it was just COVID, maybe. But I don't think it's that important. As long as you can speak English and you can express yourself in English, I think that's fine.
Yeah, if you don't get a good grade, you don't have to mention it. But English, IGCSE is not like a English proficiency test. It's not even considered as one. You can't have this as a proof that you speak English. It's so much harder because it's I feel like it's kind of the brevet for English students in the UK. The
GCSE is, the IGCSE is for international. It's the international version of GCSE. But
it's still first language speakers. It's
IGCSE.
Yeah,
I guess so.
But anyway, I just wanted to I was wondering since it's a Cambridge exam and I was
no, it doesn't matter.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm also going to be less stressed about this.
Yeah.
And what about volunteering work? Is that important for the UK? I know it is for America.
I don't. Yeah, Not really. I
Not
mean,
really.
unless it's
Okay.
like, again, unless it's, you can kind of connect it to academic concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's nice, but it's not necessary.
And overall, what do you think made you stand out most on your application? Personal statement, interviews, everything, considered.
I think it was my ability to think critically, and to form my opinion about things.
So with both, personal statement, interview.
Yeah, in both. In personal statement, it was a lot more, because I wrote a personal statement for economics and geography. I think it was a lot more focused on how I can link those two together and how I can connect the dots. But definitely my interview was thinking critically and forming my opinions. And yeah, and obviously like reflecting like my general knowledge and yeah, general culture.
And what do you think was the hardest part of your application?
I think the interview. Hold on, I need to think about this. Okay, so for the UK in general, I would say is like finding out what I actually wanted to study. Because, like realistically, you're in like fin première, right? You don't know what you want to study. I mean, you're like 16, 17, you have no idea. Like, and especially like in the UK, the way like every course is so specific. Whereas in the US, you can like choose kind of like, choose to specialize in different things. In the UK, it's very specific. It's very hard to know at that point exactly where you want to go. So I think definitely like finding out what I wanted to study was the most difficult part, and sticking to it, very difficult. For Cambridge, I would say, yeah, definitely like probably the interview. It's quite very like the stress of it. And also like the whole stress I carried on my shoulders of getting the 17 at the end of the year was like so stressful. I ended up like exceeding that like by a big like proportion, but it's just like the whole year I was so stressed about getting that 17, and every time I got like below 17 I like basically like I was like, oh fuck, I'm never gonna make it, and it was so stressful. And thinking back, I just like the back is just like it's such a joke, honestly. It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. It was a lot of stress for nothing.
But is it worth it? Like,
is it worth the stress? I mean, in the end, I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
So.
But is it really what you wanted? Like, it's amazing going to Cambridge, but like now that you're there, I mean, I'm not gonna say like, oh no, it's not worth the hype or anything, but is that what you expected? Like,
the Cambridge life?
Yeah, just be like you wanted to go there, and now you're here. Was it all worth it?
I mean,
if you're honest, you're gonna get.
Well, yeah, no. It was. I mean, it definitely was worth it. I won't say that it wasn't, but whether or not it fitted my expectations, I think is a different story. Okay. The Cambridge life.
So, were your expectations exceeded, or was it the opposite?
I think it was just like it's very different from what I imagined.
Okay.
Cambridge and Oxford's.
So what is the life there?
I think it's just like. Part of it is because like I've talked to other école manuel like students in Cambridge in the humanities, and they were like, I honestly worked more in Terminal than I did here. Okay. Which might be a bit questionable considering the fees that we're paying there. But no, it's definitely a radical like different skill set that they're asking you, that they're requiring you in university compared to high school. It's very different. So in that sense, I did not expect that at all, like academically. Like the way that you have like a week to write an essay that that you haven't even been lectured on, so you kind of have to like make your own readings and find out your own things, and you don't even have a cours. Here we had a cours. We had something to stick to. There you have nothing to stick to. You just like, they give you out like the basic kind of like concepts, and then it's your responsibility to expand on those and to pick and choose which concepts you want to expand on. So there's a lot of autonomy that I did not expect in university.
And you said, it's like, are you sad you're not like challenged enough, or is this enough of a challenge, to be working autonomously?
I think especially with the Oxbridge system of supervision / tutorials, like they call them in Oxford, that part is challenging because in that part, basically what the interview is training you for is for the supervisions. It's because you'll be in front of an expert and they will push you, they will ask you difficult questions on purpose that you have virtually you have no idea what to answer, but they will ask those questions and it's your responsibility to really exceed those intellectual boundaries. That's the challenging part, I think. But in terms of the workload, I think again depends on your course. In STEM, it's definitely a lot heavier. In the humanities, yeah, it's a lot less than I expected. But yeah, so, if I compare it to prépa, for example, the two have nothing to do with each other. Okay. Nothing. So yeah, it's up to you to choose. Well, are you more? I mean, yeah, prépa, you're just gonna work. You just have to learn things by heart, and you have to regurgitate. I mean, it's not only that, of course. Yeah. But there's a lot more of that. Part of it. But in UK universities and I guess US universities as well, it's a lot it's up to you to make your own cours, for example. So there's that difference that needs to be taken into account when you're applying to France versus UK.
And what is that part about what you said, where you're with your professor and he asked, is that an assessment, you're assessed?
No, that's just so the supervision and tutorial system it's kind of they call them seminars, I think, in other universities. But basically, it's very small groups of people. You'll be maybe 2, 3, 4, something like that. And you have to. So what often happens is either you have an essay assignment and you discuss the essay more in depth, or there's a list of questions that you have to prepare for, and then you discuss it in the supervision for that 1 hour. And yeah, basically, it's just you get 1 hour with an expert. And with one of your lecturers or one of the PhDs in your department, and you go through a bunch of questions and then they kind of push you. Sometimes you'll go beyond the questions, and that part is quite challenging. And yeah.
But then it helps you with your assessment.
It definitely helps you. Essays. Well, yeah, it helps you assess whether or not you know your content or not. So that's quite nice.
And what do you think about the professors and the students? I mean, many people say that, not many, but that, it's really hard to get into the selective universities like Oxbridge, but also the Ivy Leagues, the Harvard. But the actual program is not harder than other universities, and a big part of why they're so amazing is the students and the people there, and all the things that they did and their passions, and it's just great talking with them. So yeah, is there this sense of community in your college?
Okay, not in my college, because again, I'm not a great fan of my college. Okay. So I will say that it depends on your departments and it depends on your year. So there's that luck, chance factor, risk factor, sorry. However, in general, that's one reason I switched from geography as well, is because I thought that intellectually I was a bit disappointed by the course and by the content and by the people around me. I just it didn't feel like it was on par with Cambridge. But once I switched, I was taught by law professors that were actually one of them was part of the House of Lords, which is so incredible when I think about it. And yeah, and one of my other teachers was she was part of the IPCC, no, you do get taught by those people, and it's kind of amazing to be there. So I think that's quite nice. About the people, yeah, I think one thing that, I've been to I've been to St. Andrews the last week. I think one key difference with Oxbridge is that, like on a normal night, you go out, you get some drinks and stuff, you have fun, you talk about, college, university life. In Oxbridge, everyone, like, at some point in your conversation, there's going to be something like being intellectualized. It's just bound to be. There's bound to be those people where they'll be like, oh, yeah, like that street. Well, actually, historically, it's been da 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 da. Like it's just bound to happen, and that's I think that's one thing in those top universities is like, I mean, you kind of have to get used to it, and it's like one of those quirks, but it does push you. Talking to people from other courses as well, like talking to people in like philosophy, for example, they have so many like cool and like unhinged things to say, but then it's like so interesting as well. So no, that's quite nice, like being there, I think.
Do you get to meet other people in like clubs? Are you
Yeah,
in any
clubs and societies. Like, oh my god, like the other day, I went to like this like powerlifting training session, and you get like this like super buff person, and then at the same time they're juggling with like engineering, and they speak like 7 languages, and I was just like,
it's like
how...
a well-rounded person.
Like, yeah, but like there's so many people like this, and it's just like, how do people like, you feel so like not like humbled, by that, and it's just like, how are these people, how do they even work, like, so that's quite nice about, I think, the top universities.
And what do you know what you want to do after university?
No, yeah, so I mentioned like how I wanted to work in like sustainability and like the fight against climate change. Very generally, I don't have any specific kind of target in mind. But I do know that I want to work in the private sector instead of the public sector, which is one of the things my course tackles, is like both. But I think I'll go to the more like private side of things.
And to finish off, with Cambridge in particular, what do you think they're looking for in a student?
Again, like, I'm gonna say this again, I'm sorry, but it's just like, it depends on the course.
Okay. No, that's...
Because again, they want to see individuals that are tailor-made to one subject particularly. They want to see a potential expert in that field in you. So it really depends. In the humanities, they want to see your ability to think critically. Definitely, that's one thing. They want to see that you're able to be novel about the field you're in. So they want to see your ability to connect a lot of things. And yeah, I think that's about it. I think the rest of the interview speaks for itself.
And if you could tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would you say?
Be less anxious, be more confident. I think that's the point of this podcast, but definitely, like, if I initially, I did not think ever that I would get in, and so I didn't really look too deep in, for example, things like my college choice, because I was like, well, if I get too personally involved in this, then if I get rejected, I'm going to be, like, really hurt and things. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna try to like push it away, like make it like get some distance between the application process and me, because I was so anxious about it. So definitely be more confident about your choices. If you think you're able, if you think that you're very academically motivated, then you can aim for the top ones, definitely. But again, like, a good test is, like, I would say, if you're very, like, if you just can't wait, if you found it exhilarating to read, I don't know, like a 100-page paper on a very, very niche academic subject, that's a good indication that you are academically focused. And it's a good key difference between one successful, OGM student and another, is like, are you made for academics or not, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you very much, Juliette, for coming on the podcast. I love talking to you, and I just want to let you know I'm going to come out of this interview super motivated, inspired, and definitely less anxious. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Anxious Scholar podcast. See you in 2 weeks for the next interview, and don't miss out on any additional information on our Instagram at The Anxious Scholar.